The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hidden Stars of Theater. It's your host, Jamie Davis. As always, man, I am excited about today. I know I'm an excitable guy. I'm always excited about our guests, but today, maybe doubly excited, even though every one of our guests is just incredible. It's a new thing for us here. We've never had a guest yet who has won an actual Tony Award. And our guest today has not only won one, but has won two and has had multiple nominations and I think a bazillion Drama Desk Awards or something. Is that right, Brian? What's the count there?
No, just two Drama Desks. Yes, yeah. Just
two.
Two and two.
Two and two. Well, nominations wise, what's the Drama Desk count there?
I'd have to do a little research. I'm going to say about eight or so.
Well, you know what? That's a whole lot more than I've ever won. So you're the man. But Brian is here to talk to us today about sound design, and he obviously knows what he's doing, and it just is going to be a great time. Now, you know what else I'm excited about? Of course, as always, I'm excited you're here today because this is why we do this. This is why Brian and I decided to get together and just have a conversation about what he does and get to know him and learn, because we want you to learn about those things, because maybe somebody out there watching is thinking they'd like to be a sound designer and they want to know more about that. Well, you know what? Get out your notebook, get out your pen, because this is the time for you to take notes, because man, you've got one of the best here with you today, and he has a lot of wisdom and a lot to teach us. And of course, we're going to do it by hearing his story, which is really cool. And so I think it's just time to jump into it. I kind of been waiting for this day to come for a long time, and so I don't want to wait anymore. So Brian, welcome to the Hidden Stars of Theater, sir. It is so great to have you here. It's an honor.
I'm really honored to be here, and I'm glad that you do this. This is a great thing, and I wish it was a tool that I had access to when I was starting out. It's a wonderful reference you're putting together here.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I just hope it's used. I hope that I obviously love theater, and I love students, and I love education, and just the opportunity to kind of bring all of those together and inspire the next generation of stagehands and hidden stars that are going to be responsible for making the magic happen in years to come, because it will continue. I have faith, and that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about. So I'm not this deep guy who comes up with all of these great questions to ask to fill the whole interview. All I know to do is to ask you, what is it that has made Brian Ronan who he is today? You know, what when you were first starting out in life and things began to steer you here, what was that like? Just share that and drop some nuggets of wisdom along the way, and we are going to enjoy it, sir. But right now, Brian Ronan, the stage is yours, my friend.
Well, thanks, and I'm glad to share my story, because it's a simple story, and it's a story that has access to anybody, because if I could do it, there's no reason anybody else couldn't. I have no particular family connections. I had nobody in the business. I had no knowledge of theater when I was a young person. So my story is accessible to a lot of people. So sure, I'll just start out. I mean, I guess it's important to know that I'm from the New York area. I grew up in Queens, New York.
Okay.
And high school in the Bronx and college in upstate New York. So I'm a real New York product. I really am. Going into high school, I wasn't one of those theater geeks. We didn't, I'm not meaning to insult anybody. I'm glad that.
No, hey, we're very realistic and know who we are.
Yeah,
I embrace that.
wear it with pride, but it didn't exist. I didn't have any access to that. We didn't have a theater department. We didn't even have a drama club in my high school. But what I was really into was sports, and by the time I got to high school, primarily basketball. And I love basketball. I played, on the high school team and the local teams, and I plus just street ball in New York. It was one of my I just spent my life playing basketball. And by the time I got to be about my last year in high school, I realized I wasn't going to be able to continue to do that. There was no point to continue that. But I hadn't found anything along the way. Some of my friends were going into some of the trades. A lot of people from my neighborhood was real blue collar working neighborhood.
Yeah.
And a lot of the folks, there was a magazine called The Chief, which pulled out all the civil service tests, the cops, the firemen, the sanitation, U.S. Post Office, that sort of thing. It was a very common path for a lot of folks around in my opportunity to follow. And it just didn't speak to me. Great jobs, wonderful. Those guys, men and women, did wonderful things with that, but just didn't speak to me. So by the time I was kind of drifting out of high school, I had no particular passion other than playing ball. And nobody was going to pay me to play ball. I just playing ball player. You wanted me on your team probably, but I wasn't, all city. I wasn't, being courted by the NCAA or anything like that. I was just
not a lot of coaches knocking on the door, huh?
No. I was a fine kid. A fine guy who liked to play, but I'm very glad I played ball because, I love being part of a team. I love team sports. I love the democracy of pickup games. It's amazing. Yeah. Amazing process. Just strangers can come together and rules are in place and we all follow them not because we're getting punished, but because it's better for everybody if we just do it right. So I really believed in that and I really enjoyed that. And I'm glad I was part of that. And I learned a lot of things along with that. I learned how to win gracefully. I learned how to lose gracefully. Or if I was mad about it, just keep it to myself. But anyway, it was a passion that I had. I really loved it, and I didn't have anything else to replace that for me. So I kind of drifted a little bit after high school. I didn't go right into college, and I kind of messed around for a couple of years, had some jobs here and there, traveled a little bit. I went out to California. I took my bicycle on a bus. I went out to California and rode up and down between LA and pretty much the Orange County in LA, kind of hung around Southern California. Came back home. Yeah, I came back home and came back to the neighborhood and still had no particular plan. But I knew, I want to go someplace really warm. I was LA was nice for a while, but the bitter colds of the New York City winters were deep within my bones, and I wanted to kind of shake that off. And so I started looking up schools in Hawaii, and I found a very affordable school. It wasn't very challenging scholastically, but I wasn't scholastically gifted, so this fit for me. So I applied, got accepted, and I went, and I just went to Hawaii, and that was an amazing thing. I spent a solid year out there going to school, and but something interesting happened while I was there. I got really friendly with one of the arts teachers. And he asked me, "Hey, why don't you come help me out? I'm doing a play. They had a drama department." And I said, they were called the Lower Depths Theater. It's a little black box underneath some building. Oh, cool. And I said, sure. And I went and I got there and I was like, wow. So I hung lights and I built some scenery and I painted flats and I was on the running crew. And I really enjoyed myself, and I thought, and something was familiar to me about it, and I realized that it was that, it's like sports, like basketball. It's a live event. You get one shot to do it right. You are part of a team, and you have to cooperate to get things done. When you did well, you got applause. When you did poorly, you got boos, or at least you got negative reactions.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it was something that felt very familiar to me. And I get this. This speaks to me. I can walk this line. And I said, I think they do this back in New York, where I'm from. And I kind of came back home. A little of that.
Real quick, Brian, what was the school that you went to?
Oh, it was Chaminade University.
Okay, very good.
Chaminade College became a university after I was gone for some reason. But yes,
okay.
So Chaminade, right up the hill from Waikiki. So it was great. I did my classes, and every day I was a boogie boarder. I just ride my bike down to Waikiki Beach and go swimming and until the sun went down. It was a pretty awesome life.
Definitely a great place to thaw out from New York.
But again, nobody's going to pay you to do that, So
that's true. That is true.
We have to do something about that. So I came back to New York with this in mind, and I said, okay, I'm gonna check this theater thing out. And I went to applied and got into Queens College, which is not far from the house I grew up in. And I went there. Good theater department, very strong theater department. But the influences of the neighborhood were too much of a draw on me. I went to I'd be walking to the bus stop to go catch the Q65 to take me over to Queens College, and I'd see my friends playing ball in the schoolyard, and I'd stop ball. I'd go in there and kind of goof off. So I couldn't commit to it. I realized I have to leave the neighborhood if I'm going to like learn this thing for real. So I followed I had, due to my financial circumstances, I was bound to the state university system, and I followed a high school friend up to a place called SUNY State University of New York at Oswego, which is about as far from Hawaii as you can get, because Oswego is in the freezing snow belt of the very upper regions of New York State, bordering Canada. We shared a Lake Ontario with Canada, Toronto across the way. So freezing cold, the exact opposite of Hawaii. But that's how I began my proper education, and I followed the Scholastic group because, again, I had no connection. I knew nobody in the theater, and so I had nowhere no doors to knock on, so I went that way. And in college, it was one of those great little colleges where they kind of gave you the keys to the theater and just said, go in that 2-year there. So and I did. And I think because I took, I guess you call them gap years now. I guess I had like really 2-ish gap years. I was pretty thirsty by the time I got to college. So I went with a pretty strong attitude. I kind of wanted to do this. I wasn't a grades guy, but theater, they don't really ask you grades. They just ask, what do you know? So I just worked on all the shows, did all that. I kind of built scenery. I guess I was focusing on lighting when I went there because I just thought lighting was cool, and I knew it was one of the design elements. So I said, okay, let me do it. And I did a lot of the lighting. I ran a little lighting company while I was there, and but then I had one of maybe the 3 or 4 epiphanies I've had in my life. And I was at one of the student union events. There was probably some small concert or something like that. So my lighting team was doing our business, lighting up. I had my crew of about 12 people or so. And we were hanging our stuff and hoisting and doing what you do to rig everything to get it up there on a very small budget. And I noticed the university had an audio, probably video, but an audio guy. And he worked for the school. And I just watched him, and he was like, all by himself. No one knew what the hell he was doing. He was like laying out his cables. He was plugging up microphones. He was saying check 1, 2. And it seemed like a peaceful existence. And I thought, and I'm kind of a solitary guy. And I said, that looks like that might be for me. And I went and knocked on his door the next day and just started volunteering with him. And luckily he had some stuff to do, and he also had the ability to use some of the school system outside, like little clubs and that sort of thing. So I got to do some live performances right away. Nice. And it was it was a pretty good experience. And I said, and I kind of, 2 things happened. I realized, wow, one, I like this. This speaks to me in a way that I didn't know. Nobody else seemed to want to do it. And I thought to myself, well, this is kind of interesting because everybody wants to be, a set designer or a lighting designer or something like this, but nobody seems to want to deal with sound.
So did the school have a formal sound kind of option through the majors?
Not yet, and I don't know. I don't think that this school currently does either. They have what you call the design. What was my degree in? Theatrical design and production, I think was the degree.
Okay.
But in the sound, not so much. You just we had a good sharp teacher who a guy named John Vermelia, who he was going to kind of taught me what I knew about putting the systems together. And one thing about our college, a lot of the system is together. So you're kind of using what's in place and adapting that to shows and making sound effects and that sort of thing in the runnings of the shows. And I kind of ran that in the last year. I kind of just dedicated, okay, I'm just going to do sound. I'm going all the way with this. This is great. And again, nobody else seemed to want to do it. So then that appealed to me. So I thought this makes smart sense to me. If this is not popular and I like it, I might have better chances of employment, which is what it was all about for me. We did all that. And then I was credits short coming into my last year because not all my credits from Hawaii transferred.
Okay.
I don't think anything from Queens College transferred, but and that's fair. So I was a little short. So what I did in my last year, I pestered everybody that I could in New York, that any phone number that I had, and we had gone on one of our trips every spring. That we do a trip to New York and the theaters, and one of them was to a sound shop, Mask Sound, which is was one of the main rental shops for Broadway sound. And at the time, it was in a brownstone on West 51st Street, just west of 8th Avenue. And I went there, and I liked it there. And I remember when I thought about that, and I wrote to them, called the owner, and can I have an internship? I'm 9 credits short. Can I do that? I figured I'd do the summer, finish my credits, get the degree, and that would be great. So he said yeah, and in true form, I showed up the appointed day, and I walked in the door, and nervous as I can be, trying to look as soundish as I could, whatever that means. And I got there, and they said, "Oh, Jack's not here." Jack Shearing was the fellow's name. He's the owner of the company. "Oh, Jack's not here today." I said, "What do you mean he's not here today?" "I'm here. This is what it's about."
He was expecting me.
He was expecting me. I'm sure he had it in his calendar. Not, but anyways, he wasn't. But a fortuitous thing happened while I was kind of standing and confused. What am I going to do about this? A truck pulled up, as often does, a truck filled with sound gear from either a show or a rental maybe they did for something. And it was a group of young men, started, words weren't spoken, the truck showed up, people ran up the ramp and started pulling gear off the truck and pulling into the shop. And I just stepped in line and just joined and said, "Hey, how you doing?" I just started pushing boxes, and it was enough to to get over this kind of, what do you mean you go to college for this? The people in the shop and a lot of the professions there didn't understand, especially in a stagehand level. You were just somebody's relative or something, or you lived in Midtown and you just worked in the theater, and that's kind of so I really got some funny looks. But what do you mean you're going to school for this? We're pushing boxes here. And I said, yeah, that's part of it. But I did, and I pushed boxes, and then I came back the next day, and Jack was there, and he's, "Oh yeah, I remember you, yeah." And he said, "Yeah, give this kid something to do." And so I did the classic internship things. I got the coffee, and I swept the stoop, and I did whatever was needed. And it wound up being a really, really great education, because the sound shops really are a place that put the shows together. Designers come into the shop with their preconceived design in place, and the shop personnel have to assemble this, box it up, get it ready, push it on the truck to get either to the theater or out to a tour or something like that. So it was an excellent place to get an education. And honestly, the day I walked into that shop to start that internship, I literally haven't stopped working since that day. Not because I'm so fabulous, just because you just start, and if you don't screw up, they kind of ask you back for something else, and it's connected that way.
So just a general question that hit me here, and I haven't thought about this, but when you're putting up a show and you go to a company like Mask, a Broadway level show, do you rent those fixtures? Or the equipment?
Yeah. When you walk,
nobody purchases it, huh?
You figure, sometimes they try it once in a while. Like a big company like Disney might say, we know we're going to run for 10 years. Well, let's just buy the stuff. And it seems like a good idea, but the problem is the maintenance of gear. That's now you own it. If your wireless rack gets screwed up, what do you do? That's a big deal. I suppose just send them to the shop and give us 6 more spares. So the reciprocal relationship of rental tends to work best for the company. And remember, when you do a Broadway show, off-Broadway show, these are empty rooms. They're just there for rent. These are just shells to rent, and you have to put in everything, all the lights, the sets, everything comes in. So they're just empty rooms with a ghost light sitting in front of it, when you walk in. And so that's what the sound shops are doing. The lighting shops are doing. The scenery are building, the pieces of the scenery. Right. They're all going to merge in Midtown with a bunch of trucks and get unloaded and brought into the theaters and set up. So that's what I was part of. I was part of that process, and it was a great education because I literally one day I was like just coiling cable for 8 hours. Okay, that's the way it goes. Some days like, oh, here's a bunch of headsets that have to be fixed. Okay, let's fix these headsets. And the whole time there was these older folks around, more the journeymen, and breaking your chops, the whole time, just demeaning you every chance they can, but in a endearing way, and I'm really grateful for those people, and I was just a pest to everybody. I asked everybody everything. I see what some of the older guys are doing, and went, hey, what's it? What is this? What do you mean? And it was great because they let you kind of hang out after work. And it's work on a gear if you felt like it, and we did. I was fortunate to have this group of guys, a group of guys who just had a lot of fun with it, and it was again like being part of a team again. Like come back to that team thing, where we support each other, broke each other's chops, tried to outdo each other. It was kind of cool, and I was a novelty because again I went to college for this. And I intentionally came to this place, and so that made me kind of an oddball in that group.
Right. Yeah, but I bet they love the opportunity to kind of impart that knowledge, right? I bet they absolutely loved having somebody that wanted to know.
Yeah, absolutely, and and I think it makes imparting information makes one feel good about what you're doing. It helps you refresh in your brain what it is, and it's just a good feeling to share with others. That's something that might be useful for them. And again, this fellow Jack Shearing was a brilliant guy. His father had started the company, and he ran it, and he was one of the early sound designers. I think shows like Fiddler on the Roof were his, or that kind of. I'm talking that period of time, the first Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
That kind of thing. And he was very determined to have a educated group of people that go into the business with more knowledge of sound than existed, because there wasn't a lot of sound folks around at the time. And he made the offer, and some of us younger guys took him up on it. We'd show up at like 6 a.m. before the shop opened, and he would just do these classes. And it was just so cool. Now I found one of my notebooks, and I opened it up recently, and it's like I still have no idea what this was, what this stuff meant, because it was hardcore math, it was hardcore physics, and I just was over my head then. It's still over my head, but the difference is that generation had to physically put the amps together. They had
absolutely, yeah. They didn't have an app, or they didn't have a computer program to plug the numbers into and get the output. Yeah, they had to know it. That's awesome.
And I compare a lot to like cars. Like when I was a young guy in my first crappy car, I could change the fan belt. I could do it. Right. I was not a grease monkey. I was not good at that stuff. But now nobody touches their car, because you open the hood and you don't know what's going on in there. You got to take it back to the shop and they do it. So sound has gone that way too. It's just more specialized. You don't need to know how to change your fan belt anymore. I don't think. But anyway, so the shop was a great education for me. And while I was at the shop, the designers would come in, and you start to get to know them, and I would just pester every one of them, hey, can I work on your show? And most of them like, no, I'm a Broadway designer. You don't have a union card yet, so you can't work on Broadway. Okay. And I just would keep bothering this. And sure enough, one of the very successful designers at the time, a guy named Tom Morse, who also happened to go to my old school, Oswego. We didn't have a strong connection, but I knew he had gone there, and he kind of, I probably bothered him enough to know that that I went there too. And one day he came in, he had an off-Broadway show, and the cool thing about off-Broadway shows is that they are non-union, so it's a perfect opportunity for young folk and it's a great entry-level position to get into mixing. And this came up, and he and the foreman discussed it and said, why don't you give Brian a shot? And I did, and I remember heading out the door. I might be remembering this in a more romantic fashion, but going out the door, and one of the crusty old guys said, hey kid, if you don't screw this up, they'll keep calling you. And it being encouraging, but that was about as encouraging as it got. If you don't screw this up, they'll be, oh good, he's now to screw up. Great, well good, we can call him again. I didn't screw it up. I ran my first off-Broadway show. It was a show called Diamonds, and it was a show about baseball, written by a bunch of writers, and kind of vignettes about baseball and the love of baseball and that sort of thing. And the cool thing about it was for my first show, it was directed by the legendary director Hal Prince.
Oh wow, man! Yeah, that was your first show.
First professional show.
That's incredible.
A guy named Paul Gimignani, who was a legendary musical director, did music direction. Ken Billington is still one of the most working lighting designers in the business.
Yeah.
Did the lights, and the stage manager, a very high-end Broadway stage manager, who just happened to do a favor for Hal Prince. She worked with Hal Prince. So my first intro was that it put me at this level. Not that I was aware of it, but just the expectation was here. And that's okay. That's it. So it was a great launching place for me.
And you were the A1 on that show?
Yeah, there was only A.
Right. You were the 1, 2, and 3.
You just did.
It was a short alphabet.
Yeah, that came along later, which I'm glad. But that came much later. So that was the A, and I loved it. It was great. So I'd work by day. I would work in the shop in the daytime and go do my show at night and on the weekends. Had no. That's not true. I was gonna say I had no life, but I totally had a life. I loved working at the shop. I loved working on the show. You go out for drinks, and the show was down on Bleecker Street in the West Village. It was the coolest neighborhood in the world, and this is great. And it was a wonderful way to spend my 20s. So I worked in the shop, and then once I did one show, I did a lot of off-Broadway shows, and I did a bunch of them for different designers, and really connected with a designer named Tony Miola, who had been a premier mixer when I was first entering, and then was just dabbling with design in like the mid '80s, and I was dabbling with mixing, so we kind of did a few things together. So we kind of over the years we kind of stayed paired quite a while. He was quite a mentor to me, nice. But his design career hadn't really solidified just yet. But and I did that for quite a while. I did the off-Broadway scene, and it was a great scene for me. And until time came for the touring came up. That was kind of the next thing. You wanted to, really wanted to be. I was really interested in touring. A tour was going out. And the cool thing about touring was, at least at the time, was like you needed a union card, an IATSE card. And because the pay wasn't so great, it was a lower end tour, but you got an IATSE card. I was like, fine, sign me up, I'm good. And I just loved touring. I did a show, a Down and Dirty, the bus and truck version of 42nd Street, which had now probably been ran on Broadway maybe 10 years prior. I was now gone through the first national tours, the other tour. Now we're in the lower level, the bus and truck tour. But I was happy to be there. And so now I have my IATSE card. I'm now a touring engineer, and that's a whole different game. That's you have to kind of it's all about the truck and the truck pack and getting it out and getting quick and get the show up. You unpack the truck probably on Monday morning, and Tuesday night you have a show. Yeah. Sometimes it's tighter than that. Sometimes it's that night. Sometimes there's 3 stops in 1 week. But really, and a great education, and again, a lot of fun. Just had a lot of. It's part of a team again, We got now we're a traveling team. We got to make this work, and that was very exciting. And I did that. I did one. Then I did a tour of Cats after that. Stayed on the road, and then I decided. And then I got a call about my friend Tony Miola had now kind of risen through the ranks, and he was now the associate designer on Les Mis in America.
Oh wow.
And they were opening up. He had been a mixer on the Broadway company and assumed the role of the associate designer. And they were opening in a Los Angeles company. And they said, "Do you want to come?" I didn't want to leave Cats because I was really enjoying it, and I just didn't want to leave them. But the opportunity was too great, and so I did. I went out and did the show. I mixed Les Mis for a year out in L.A. Followed it up to San Francisco. That was the next stop of the kind of tour, and sat there for a while. And then, about 6 months into the run in San Francisco, I started thinking, I kind of miss New York. I want to go back home. I want to get back into the Broadway world. And I talked through with some folks and said, I'm going to do this. And I left on good terms. And then in that wonderful way, the way serendipity can work for you, I had kept my crappy little apartment, my little studio apartment on Chelsea, and I came home, flew home, had my bags, and was putting the key in the door. Couldn't remember exactly how to turn the key on because I hadn't been there in a while.
Right. Yeah.
And the phone was ringing, my landline, well, the phone was ringing when I
Yeah,
when
and kids watching this, go Google what a landline is.
it was the phone, and and so I as I kind of hustled in and I got in there. So even my bags weren't even unpacked yet, and I picked up the phone, and it was Tony again offering me a Broadway show. That was going out of town to DC and was going to come in, and I said,
the day you got back into New York, you get your offer. That's good. That's good living right there, my friend.
Yeah, it was good, and then that it was just like that because a quick sidebar. With this COVID thing, my wife, who's a choreographer, had been a dancer for her whole life. We were talking about what I'm doing as well. I guess you apply for unemployment because you're eligible. And she goes, and I was doing it. She goes, "Haven't you done this before?" I said, "No." She goes, "You've never been on unemployment?" It's like, "No, I've never not worked." It just and she of course gave me a lot of grief about it, but that's just a fact. I just never not worked, and not because I'm so fabulous, just because I was present and I was available, and I didn't screw up too much.
You did the hustle, as I say. You did what you had to do. That's great.
So anyway, so now I'm back to New York, and I'm mixing, and I did a series. I was a sound mixer on Broadway for about 10 years. I did about as many, opened about as many shows, and during all that time, one great thing about being on a show. One, I loved being on shows. I loved mixing. I love that 3 hours a night where you just kind of zen on into the mix. I love being part of a company, again, a team. Now we're on a Broadway show team. And I liked having the days free, and I like being able to, go to the bars in Midtown after the show. And I love playing on the Broadway softball show league, on Thursdays.
No basketball league for Broadway.
No. There was,
maybe you'll have to start one. Maybe you should start one.
Too many broken ankles. That'll be and I did that for a while. And while I was mixing on the Broadway scene, I did a bunch of shows and moving around with designers, mostly Tony Miola, but then some other phone. He'd have something for me. I'd work with somebody else and that sort of thing. It's kind of a communal feel. And while I was doing that, I'd be working in the shop sometimes, or I'd assist somebody on a show, or I did a lot. I would do production, do the loading, do the shop prep for somebody, because I had a lot of these skills between working in the shop, touring, mixing. I had a lot of skills of the basics of how a show goes together and how to set it up so you can either tour it or have it sit down. So I had a good base of that, by the time I started doing this. And so by the time I started getting more assistant design work, and I would only do it part-time. I would get a show open, take 2 weeks off from the show I was on, and go to design and get back to the show. I'm a blue-collar kid. I like getting paid every week. I wasn't interested in casting my lot in the artistic world of design. It didn't make sense to me. I was like, it looks cool. I like the work, but no, I need my steady paycheck, and I don't like. And I also saw the grief that the designers sometimes had to deal with. There's a level of grief that you didn't have to deal with as a mixer. And I was like, that's not for me. That's for somebody else. I'll support those people, but I'm not interested in myself. And that carried on for quite a while until fate changed again for me. I was on another one of those shows. I was still mixing a show. I can't remember what I was doing at the time, but and I was assisting a fellow named Jonathan Deans, who was a fabulous sound designer, and he was pretty early in his career as an American designer. He had come over from England, and he was kind of starting out his first. It was going to be his first Broadway design, and we couldn't, and he had to pull out pretty late in the process. We were probably loading in, and and he, for some reason, personal reason, some professional reason, he had to pull out. And they did the rare thing. Instead of bringing in a ringer, they said, "Do you want to do it?" And the show was called Busker Alley, and it starred a guy named Tommy Tune, who was a big legend.
Absolutely, huge legend. Yep,
he's a giant of theater, and we did that, and it was my first design, and it was doing a tour. It toured out of town, did probably about 8 stops before it was supposed to come to Broadway. Didn't come to Broadway because Tommy Tune broke his ankle out of town in the last stop in Florida. Tampa, and but we were loading in. The marquee was up. We're all ready to go, and there's my first Broadway design. And again, I'm still kind of not sure about this design thing, but I'm committed. I'm in. I signed the paper. I shook the hands. I'm going to do it. But so that design went away, and I was kind of content to go back to mixing because again, I did bump, especially being a young designer. I bumped up to a lot of the hassles that I saw other people go through. And, it's pretty peaceful. I can just go back and mix my show and enjoy play softball on Thursday. And
there you go.
So that happens. But I did have my first taste of real design work.
Yeah.
And it went pretty well. Yeah, I had things to deal with, of course, but it went pretty well. And so I'm back to mixing, and then I came along the musical Rent, and Rent is it was a big hit down off Broadway, and I was coming to Broadway, so a designer, again a young designer, was hired, and he asked me to mix the show. And I said sure, and I told Rent because I was still dabbling with design, and I said you know what I'll do? I'll stay here with you for 2 years. I'll give you 2 solid years doing the show, maintaining the show, taking care of it. But then I'm probably I think I might do some more design if there's design to be had. And that's what happened. That was a big transition for me because for about 10 years I had Rent as a home base. And I pretty much just worked on it and its tours or anything like that. And then after the 2 years, I just started to take little designs here and there. I got hooked up with the Roundabout Theater Company, which is a regional theater in New York City. I kind of got connected with them, and I wound up doing quite a few shows for them, I did a bunch in a row, and it really is where I started to hone my skill as a designer, a solo designer, but I still have the security of getting paid every week, which I liked. But somewhere deep in, as we got deeper into it, I realized, I'm not doing Rent any favors. I'm kind of part-time here, and I'm not really doing the best I can for the shows and part-time here. Yeah. I think I have to tell the universe that I'm a designer, and
it's time to make that step.
Leave Rent, and I did after about 10 years, and I just became a full-time designer. I had done probably about 6 Broadway shows by this point, and just kind of went with it, and gulped and became that artist, lived like an artist that I kind of always kind of dreaded. And it took a while. I didn't always know what to do with myself 8 o'clock on nights when I wasn't, didn't have a show to go to. It was a strange feeling for a while. Yeah. But I got used to it. You were adaptable human beings, and so I adapted to it and worked pretty well. And that's kind of where my entry into the design world, solo design world, kind of, landed me. And now we're about like, it started, and Rent started like in 96, I think it was, and then throughout that I do a few, but it probably wasn't until like almost 2004 that I said, okay, I'm going to be a designer full time.
Right.
And that's when it happened for me. And it was slow going from the beginning. I had one big hit with the show called Cabaret, a revival of Cabaret that was really well received and did very well.
I remember that. Yeah, that was a great show.
It gave the world Sam Mendes became kind of a star, become a big Hollywood director now, and Cumming, who no one heard of him till, but it was just one of those rare times someone steps on a stage and was, wow, this guy's amazing, and he of course has gone on to do many amazing things since. But and Natasha Richardson was in that. So anyway, so I'd had a taste of a hit. But then things cooled off for me for a while, and I was just a New York designer, just kind of just working on the streets and trying to keep my name in things and doing this, and maybe it would happen. Some sort of things would fall through, or shows would open and close. So, but that's part of the life of a designer,
right?
So that takes us to there. That takes us into the meat of my solo design world, and probably I guess in the mid 2000s now. By the time I'm kind of like really kind of doing things on my own.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. And so, like, how many shows have you put up on Broadway? What are you at?
I think when we opened, I was just in previews with the show called Mrs. Doubtfire when we got shut down, and I think when that opens, hopefully it'll open. I think that'll be my 45th Broadway show.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible.
It's been a long stretch. Yeah, it sure has been.
Yeah, and your Tony Awards that you won, what those were for?
Book of Mormon back in 2011.
Yep.
And then for Beautiful, the Carole King musical in 2014.
Nice, which was supposed to be the last show that on tour that I was going to get to see in Midland, Texas. And I was supposed to be there for a conference for the job I used to have. And anytime I travel, I always see if there's a show in town, and there was. And it was one of those things where being by myself, I can get a good seat because there's usually one by itself.
Yeah.
Was really looking forward to that, but didn't happen. So
sorry about
it's all right.
that. Yeah.
Hey, I will have more opportunities, my friend.
I hope so.
To hear Brian Ronan shows for sure.
I hope so for years to come. I hope.
Absolutely. Well, what an incredible story! And like you said at the beginning, one of the things I love about your story is, you were the common man, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were this kid from Queens who just came from nothing theater-wise, no connections and stuff, and just worked hard and diligently followed the path that was put before you and did what you were asked to do, and here you are today on the hidden stars of theater.
On his
I mean, a Tony Award-winning sound designer, which is so encouraging. It's got to be encouraging to me. I'm 50. It's probably a little too late for me to jump into the game, but so many kids out there where you were, they can do it. They can do it.
Really, someone's got to do it. Might as well be you. You young person out there watching this thing. Well, why not you? Why not?
Absolutely. Well, hey, there's some things that I would love to have you do that you can do that we haven't heard before. One of those is it intrigues me to hear process. Right, I'm a process guy. I believe in process. One of my great sayings that some of my mentors have just honed into me is trust the process. Right. Trust the process. And I would love to hear your process for sound design from kind of the beginning. In other words, you get a call, the phone rings, and it's somebody either pitching to you or your agent a new show, and all the way up to putting it up. It's opening night on Broadway. Boom. Okay. What does that look like?
Because the process is pretty similar every time. Rarely does it change. My process anyway. And you're right. So the phone rings. It's either someone calling me first thing you do is what are the dates? And you go to the calendar. Can you do this? And yep, I'm clear. Great. I'm available. And then are you interested? That's the other thing. And usually I am, unless it's somebody I try to work with similar people. It's rare that I get a call from somebody I've never heard of. It doesn't really happen. I might want to check on. It's like, who is this? Are they okay? Are they? Is it a good, respectable company, and that kind of thing? But interest and availability is the first thing that you check out. And so before even any conversation goes in, you pull out the calendar. When is it? When are you in production? When are you in tech? When is the band on stage? Oh, good. And if you're clear, there's no problem. If there's a conflict, which happens a lot, you have to say, okay, great, but I was committed to a show prior, so here's the story. I can do this, but I have to give them this date, this date, and this date, and then I can join you here. Are you cool with that? And if they are, great, then we can keep going. Right. And then you get into the mundanes of the business part of show business, like your contract and that kind of thing. And and I have an agent who works that sort of thing out. It's pretty standard these days. You kind of have your rate that you've earned over 30 years of doing the same thing. Yeah. So I imagine there's always some haggling, but it's always going to be in the ballpark. So that's rare. That's rarely a hold up. And then what I like to do is get the script. What's a script? And a college teacher of mine told me once, just read the script once without really paying attention. You're just going to read through it, put it away, and come back to it later. And I've actually done that. I've kept that advice. So I'll read the script. Great. Okay, now I know what the show is. In the meantime, I'll probably talk to the director. I'll probably talk to the musical director just to get an understanding. What are we doing here? Is this a rock show? Is it a chamber piece? Is the band in the pit? Is it in the part of the scenery? That informs choices that are made. I just want to know what kind of show are we doing here, and then you have to go to the venue. I'll get to the venue and say and what I call shoot the room. You take I do calculations based on a lot of the speakers companies I use. I prefer Acoustics speakers, a French company, and they have what they call prediction software. And you can go you take your measurements of the theater, you plot it in, and that can tell me, okay, well, if I want to hit the balcony with this, I need 15 boxes of this, and if I want to hit down here, there's a funny little angle over here, and I can only do 6 on the side, and that kind of informs. And this is what I call the if I rule the world design. If there was no other elements, if I could just do whatever I wanted.
The dream design.
Which never happens. But this is what I would do if I could. And then, okay, great. This gives me that gives you a ballpark to go to. And then, now we start the conversations. Like I say, I don't rule the universe. Call the lighting designer. Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? What are you doing? Call the set designer. Look at the drawings. Oh, I see. You got it. You have a big truss piece here. Okay, so that means so there are parameters that we have to work with. This other team that you're a part of that you kind of have to work with and work out the priorities for people. What's important, what's not. What can you give up? What can you go? Hey, you could, if you could just move your lamps 3 feet downstage, I could be that sort of thing. And that's where you start putting the show together, and your rule the universe design starts getting crossed out, and you start putting the practical thing that you can put up in there.
As does every other designer, right? You all have give and take. It's a give and take collaboration. That's beauty.
It absolutely does. And while this is going on, I'm finding out what's the cast size, how big is the cast, what size is the band, are there any practicals? Is there like a live radio on the set or something like that has to work? That informs me. The choices I have to make on the input side of things. I've kind of ballparked the output, the speaker section. Now, what are the input sides? And then are there any special effects that go along with that? Not just sound effects, but just, do we have to have voices coming from the back of the house, from the side of the house? Is there surround an important element in the show? And that all goes together. The whole goal of this part of the process, gather all this information, and then put a bid list together. A bid list is now we're back to the business side of show business, because the bid list is the thing that you're saying to the shops that you're giving this to and the producers, this is what we need to do the show, and that's going to cost this much money, and that's a whole other conversation. Then there's probably depending on what level you're at, but there's always some haggling about that. The shops. Right. Going to cost. All right, we're going to use this shop. They have the best bid, but they're still, $2,000 a week more than we want to be at. What can you do? All right, well, I guess I can trade out for some older stuff, and and that can try to work with the shop. What can we do to get it within the budget? And this is a constant game. It's like selling a car. There's always the producer works off the shop works off me. I work off of both of them. It's a symbiotic relationship. We just kind of work it out. Come to some agreement and then proceed. But that's a vital part. The bid list is a vital part of the process. And that on that piece of paper is all the information you've just garnered over the last 2 months or so. I bid that in. Now we've decided on a sound shop. We have a bid list. I've gone over with my associate who helps me kind of fine tune it. I do the ballpark, and they do all the fine tuning, and put this list together. And then we start building. It's time to build in the shop. We go to the shop where I used to be, and it starts to get assembled. While that's happening, rehearsals are happening off site, in a small space someplace. And while they're rehearsing, things pop up. The director gets another idea. Something goes way. So you go, okay, we do need to add, something downstage, right? Because the actor has to work off of it or something. So a practical speaker or something like that, and that grows with the show. So you're learning the show as that goes along. Once we get to that point, once it's built, into the theater we go, and we start loading in. And then all those things, always something comes up. Oh crap, we thought we had this worked out, but look at this, where the hardware is bumping into each other, more compromising, more this, more that, and that goes on, for a while in that part of the process. We get loaded in, and then there's all these little milestones that happen. So from the shop list to the shop build to the load-in date. then the next important date is the cast on stage. That's okay. We're start check. It's a big day. Everything's happening. We're all there. Everybody's amped up. The actors are pumped, and we get on stage, and it's this flurry of activity. And you have to the parts of the sound design, the unsexy part of the sound design, have to work. That's where like the intercom, the video system, the closed circuit video system, so we can see the conductor. When you're in the wings making your quick change, you can see the conductor waving his baton, so you can sing along. The paging system, so and so your Chinese food is here. These things have to be in place.
Right.
And a wise sound person once told me, if you want to be considered good in sound, make sure the intercom works, because everything else is subjective. But everyone knows when you can't talk, the stage manager can't talk to the electrician. It's vital. It's unsexy, but it's vital. And it's like a service we provide. Every element has something that's unsexy. I don't think the lighting designer really wants to deal with fog, but that falls under their umbrella, and they got to deal with it. And it's like, I'm very glad they got to deal with that. They're very glad I got to deal with intercom. So these things happen. That's part of mine. So while that's been going on, so now that we're in there, by now I've also read the script again on a solid time, a good close look at the script as it is, because they change. The script changes during this process. What are my sound effects? We have to get the sound effects ready for the show. And I have collected over the years a library of, I don't know, tens of thousands of library sound cues and the things that I've built on my own and collected on my own and added to shows. So I use that and utilize it. These days, I've gone through all the various formats, but right now QLab is kind of the winning playback program. So we tend to use QLab and that sort of thing for that program that. And that's one element that I keep to myself. I turn a lot of things over. I really believe in letting my team do a lot of the fair share of things that need to be out there, but I do like to control the sound effects myself. I just hear them in my head. I'd rather edit them. I might need them to set up the computer for me because they're smarter than I am at that sort of thing. And no problem. No problem. I'm happy to let them do that. But as long as I can get my levels, my crossfades, that sort of thing, the things that are important to me when we hit go, and that's now become hard.
You still build that track yourself.
Yeah,
cool.
And, when we get to that first day of the cast on stage, and we all rushed, first day in mics, so, everything, the intercom's working, the mics are working great, and we say 2 lines and we stop. And we sit there for a day and a half while they light, and it's cool. It's a lighting designer's turn. That first pass through the show takes like 2 solid weeks of me standing around, not doing a hell of a lot, but just waiting for something to do. It's all about lighting. It's all about costumes and that sort of thing, and that's the priority. The next part of the process and the milestone is like now the cast is on stage. We're chugging along slowly, very slowly. But the band is coming in. Usually that comes in about like 5 days before the first paid performance. Band comes in. That's a whole thing. We might be just about finished checking the show. I usually have a couple sessions in the morning. We kind of get the band. I'll just go with the pit. Most shows are in the orchestra pit. Get them set up in the pit. One day, great. Come back the next day, have a sound check. Maybe the composer's there, the orchestrator's there. We're kind of chatting about the bass sound and the this and if they're violins. We just kind of talk with what's going on, the reacting. And the unfortunate part of the process is you've just started, and they're kind of the person who's spent the last 10 years writing the show has it in their head, and you got to give that person something to go with. You got to give them confidence from that first day. So that's a pretty intense day when we add the band. And then we add that in, and then I'm on point here because the composer's around, the orchestrator's around, the dance arrangers around, the music team kind of comes to life, and they're kind of assuming we've got this down, and we just do that, work that for a couple days to the first preview, and the previews where my work really starts, because we have about a month of previews. So I'll start. I want to make sure I've got it together so that the commercially we're viable. The people who are paid to see the first preview or sit in the balcony, they can hear and they can understand what's going on. It may not be perfect yet, but no one's saying, what did they say? I can't have that, because that person can go down to the box office at intermission and say, I want my money back. I can't hear what's going on. And I can't allow that to happen.
Right.
That's a big part of the process. Once that's kind of in place, there's no fires, great, good. Now I can start tweaking and tweaking. And every preview, I sit in a different location of the theater every night and just kind of tweak a little bit, and sometimes I'll just use. I'm off of the iPad stuff. The connections make me too nervous, so I'll just either text my associate, give me 2 more milliseconds of delay on this speaker, and that kind of thing, or I'll just wait till intermission and come down and do it. But I tweak until and I always tell people, you can't ask me what the show sounds like. You can ask me, but the honest answer isn't going to come until the night before the press comes, before the New York Times and those people come. That's when I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to present the show to the world, even though people have been hearing it for the last month.
Right.
But that's
a working process until then, for sure.
Yeah. So that takes us through the preview process, and then we all hold our breath during the press nights. There's usually about 6 of them, and we just hope nothing goes wrong, and we get. By the time we get to opening night, there's really nothing more to be done. So that's the night I'll have a glass of wine with dinner before the show. So okay, good. So now there's nothing to do now except just we're here.
Relax, enjoy it.
We're done. This is it. Now fate is now in the hands of what will be. If we're going to be a hit show, great. If we're going to not be a hit show, that happens more often than not. So it's just part of this. So that takes me from day one to opening night, and that's That's usually about, depending on if there's a pre-Broadway, which usually happens, you go out of town and do it. But I'm kind of concentrating in the Broadway section of it. And, that's a good 3 months or so right there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's exactly what I was looking for. That's pretty incredible. When you go see a show, you don't think about that, right? You just know that it works and the sound is awesome. And you rarely stop to think about all of the work that went into getting that done. And to me, that's a sign of a successful design, that I don't think about the design.
Agreed.
I can just hear, right?
And the thing, and along with that process, there's dozens of jobs, going into making that happen. Talking about more hidden stars, all these people that. That the stagehands. It's amazing the amount of people that goes into make this process happen. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
We get to it now. You look at the director, you look at the actors, you look at that stuff. But there's behind in those dark spots in the theater, there were dozens of people, making a living.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We've talked to some great ones, some great, even, A1s and A2s and A3s, depending on the size of the show. But it's just fascinating to me all that they do, and it would fall apart without them.
Absolutely.
I think about a Broadway level show without the stagehands, and the actors would be very confused and lost after a while. So we love our hidden stars, man. We love them all. So you've mentioned your team several times. Talk to me about what it takes to be on the Brian Ronan audio team. How do you pick these guys? What do you look for in good technicians?
Well, I tend to, the most important person is my associate. So that's the person. Now I've had 5 significant associates in my time. And the one I have now, Cody Spencer, who's been with me for, it must be coming up on 10 years now. Is that possible? Wow. Yeah, almost that long, maybe 8 or so. But he's been with me, and he was, and I had a great associate woman named Ashley Hansen, who now went on to work for Meyer Sound. But fortunately, she could kind of hand the torch off to Cody, and so here's what we do in this seat. And then Cody came in and started, and he developed his own way, and together with me, but he has his own voice and his own way of doing things, which is fine. And I trust him so much now. So that's and he's with me from he's working before he's ever getting paid. He's helping me with the shop prep. He's helping me make decisions and reminding me of things that I've forgotten. And so that associate's a big part of it. I try to get him on every show I can. Sometimes there's a conflict. Sometimes he's got to be out of town with a pre-Broadway. I need somebody else. So I have a couple of other people that I'm happy to use if they're available too. So the associates are right there. The mixer is a mix. You're now into your A1s and A2s and A3s. Your A1, again, we have these kind of tribes of people that we work with. We kind of, my kind of tribe, and Nevin Steinberg has his tribe, and and Peter Lenski has his tribe, and and we all know each other. It's a pretty small world, so we all know each other, and we're all kind of friendly. It's amazing. There's something about sound people. We I don't know what it is, but we hang out together. We just do more so than I think. I don't know that lighting designers hang out together, but I think probably because most of us were stagehands together at some point.
Right. Yeah.
Unlike other designers aren't necessarily nuts and bolts people until they get into it. But anyway, so my tribe, I have like several mixers. I have a couple of go-to sound mixers, A1s. I try to use them every chance I get. If there's been an A1 on a show that has been running for a while, and maybe you're ready for a change, okay, good. I'll bring that person onto the new show and slip somebody else into that one, which is great because that introduces me to another person that could be a tribe member. Somebody I know will eventually trust. But all right, let's slide you into a show that's up and running. It's a different skill set than originating a show and originating a mix. So I have a few folks that I'll use there. I always try the yin and yang of a male and a female, and either A1, A2. I try as much as I can, just because there's males and females in the casts, and it's just easier. Knocking on the dressing room door. It's just easier if it's a female going to the female ensemble room. Doesn't have to be. Everyone's professional, so it's no big deal. But I just like to do that if I can. I think it's a nice dynamic.
Yeah, so it's a good balance.
You can't, just who's available and who's, that sort of thing. So that's where that comes from, the A1, A2. And so A2s, I have some A2s because some people are really good. A great A2 is an amazing thing because there's this thing that happens. I'm usually too busy to be dealing with those first days of the cast getting into the mics and that sort of thing. That's a big job because they're getting the costumes, they're getting their wigs on, and all this mics. It can be a pain in the butt for another element for an actor to deal with. We have a good A2 who's smooth and can calm people and reassure them. It's a great skill set. And they're also the one back there troubleshooting all the comm issues and video issues and all the other things that you don't want to hear about in front of the house. But they're putting these fires out. It's a great thing. While the mixer can concentrate on just getting the show learned and getting it up into a presentable position before that first performance. The A3s tend to be locals, and we're given. So from the show's perspective, as the producer's perspective, I have an A1 and A2 and an associate. They were kind of the show's team. Then we're pretty much assigned an A3 and crew from each house. They have their little tribes too, right. But that's usually how that works. And again, I know most people by now, so I can say, hey, is so-and-so available? It'd be great if we can have them as the A3 because I know they can mix, and that'd be wonderful. And say, no, you're getting my nephew, Barney. That's the way it's going to be. Come on, Barney, let's go. That's the way it's going to go. But so there's that dynamic. That's the local versus the working in tangent with the contracts people, the pinks. The pink contract is the IATSE contract. And then the locals have their own contract, but we work together, but separately. It's an interesting dynamic, and that's kind of that's pretty much how the team develops.
Okay, very good. Yeah, the whole A2 thing. I know that man, who was it? I think Renee Levine is an A2 that lives in New York City, and she talk about a very, very sharp fireball, man. Because she chooses to be a fill-in A2, which means she's actively knows the track for 4 or 5 different shows at a time.
That's a part of the brain. Yeah.
That would make me go nuts. I would think I would have trouble remembering all the tracks for one Broadway show, but much less. But she absolutely loves it. And talk about special people. That's
Absolutely, a valuable thing because people break their ankles at the Broadway show league on Thursday, and crap, we need somebody tonight. Can you get over there and can you cover? And these things happen, so it's a valuable thing. It's a very marketable thing. So not everybody has to know. That's why I always tell people you don't have to know everything, but you have to know what you know well and be able to slot it in.
Very good. So what's the most important aspect of creating a well-designed show? That's when you've got it right.
Oof. I don't know if you ever know.
You never know.
This is why I like mixing so much, because it was finite. At the end of the night, you mixed a good show or not. Design, you might think you have it, then somebody's aunt comes to see the show and says, I was up in the balcony, I couldn't hear very well.
Get new hearing aids.
It's a valid comment. It's a valid comment. I mean, I guess when I started out, I thought it was like, sound effects. Like, okay, that's the creative part of being a sound designer. This is the meat and potatoes of it all, and it's really not. I don't think. I think the most valuable aspect of sound is delivering, back to the business of show business, delivering a PA system that every seat in the theater can hear, as equally as possible, at least so they can tell the story, hear the music, and they're all getting their money's worth. And it really comes down to it. I know, I sometimes, I know younger people. Sometimes I've talked to college people that are kind of, I want to hear about the artistic stuff. They go, yeah, it's artistic, but it's commercial, man. This is my job. We got to do this. We got to, right. And I can't have Aunt Molly, complaining about the, third row from the back of the balcony. I got to take care of those people. So the PA system and what it does is the most important part of the aspect, I think. Again, I mentioned the unsexy part, but it's true. If the common video, the show comes to a grinding halt if the stage manager can't tell the electrician go. It seems simple, but it's complex, and it's absolutely it's the bones of a sound design. I wish it was somebody else's department, but it's not. It's under my umbrella, and you got to take it seriously. You got to stay on top of that. But so I really think to me, it's delivering the commercial product to every seat in the theater. That I think is the most important aspect of a sound design. And I know it doesn't sound fancy, it doesn't sound artistic, but it's valid, and and it brings us back to the economics of what we do.
No, absolutely. And I think, and that's on every level of theater. And I think I would encourage, and interestingly, on the community theater level where I live, that's the number one thing that we will hear a complaint about. And it is valid. The acting can be mediocre, but grandma's still going to love it. The lighting, the theater that I work in, we've got maybe 6 working circuits, but as long as there's enough light to see what's going on. But if the sound isn't good, we get people walking back to the sound booth. And it's valuable. I can't hear the show, and they'll leave.
Something about sound is universal. It doesn't really happen anymore, but you may be old enough to remember, like if you go to a movie theater, and sometimes it would sound immediately. It was sound. It was just like understood. Fix this now. This is unacceptable.
That's right.
And it's unacceptable. It just is.
It absolutely is. And so, and for teachers out there, or if you are a producer or a director in any level of theater, make sure that piece is right. I know in my experience, most of the time, it's almost a last minute thing in amateur theater to think about that. Well, we got to get the mics out now, right? There's really not a design. And why not? We do a light design. We direct the show. We have choreography and stuff, but we don't really ever do a sound design. It's just pull the mics out of the closet and stick them on the actor. Do it. Let's change that, amateur theater. Let's follow Brian's process. Do it. We can do it. Obviously, we won't have the budget, but that's okay. You can still do the best with what you have.
Get a grant. Get some .com person to donate to that. Who knows?
Hey, if you know any of those, Brian, give them my email.
I will.
That's funny, but no, it's true. And I am of the thought that if your mics squeal and you can't stop them squealing, do it without mics. Obviously, in Broadway you can't do that, but in a small theater you absolutely can. I grew up in the days of projecting. We didn't have mics. You had to project. And it comes in handy. I'm sometimes the only one heard when a sound system goes down in a show and I'm with a bunch of young actors.
I was just asked to help out with a high school that was around the corner from where I grew up. And I went there and I saw what their problem was, and I got one of the shops to donate some old stuff, and I put it up. And I remember they were talking about the place, and they said, okay, now we have these microphones, we'll put them on stands downstage, and that'll work, right? And I said, yeah, kind of, but I got to tell you, it was a Catholic high school, it was a sister, whatever her name was. I came to see Godspell in this very auditorium in like 1969 or something like that. And I remember Georgie Valenti's big sister was up on stage, and there were no mics. I don't remember what you were saying, but I remember the show. I remember enjoying myself. I said, let's try without, unless you absolutely need it. I don't know if they heeded my advice, but yeah.
Well, listen, we've got a great opportunity with you because you've put a lot of shows up on Broadway. You've worked with some great actors and directors and producers. You got to have some fun stories for us. You have a couple in mind that maybe you pull out. Tell us.
It's funny. I was just thinking. I saw something that made me think of this. I was very fortunate. I got called in to do there's a couple of things, but I'll start out with something that was positive because so much of it is like heart stopping. But I got luckily called in to do when Bruce Springsteen was on Broadway. I got called to do the sound. He wanted a theatrical sound person and a theatrical lighting designer. That's what he wanted. Instead of the rest of his touring team, his operator and his video guy and his security team and that kind of thing. And it was great. And you can give me a show with a pit of 30 musicians, cast of 50, big venue, big time director. And I'm never nervous. I know it's gonna be problems. I know it's gonna work out. But we're setting up, and I felt pretty good about it. And but we weren't like working the sound. It was just kind of like happening. I'm like, okay, this is all right. And then and the night of the first performance, I got pulled over, and I'd only met him briefly, and then I got pulled over by the production manager. Said, "Oh, Brian, now you gotta walk with Bruce." And I was like, "What do you mean walk with Bruce?" Every venue he goes to, be it a stadium or a club, he has his guitar tech, who's also a singer, guitar player, piano player, do his own material, and Bruce walks around and listens to the sound.
Double check everything.
Go walk with Bruce. And I was like, okay, I'm walking with Bruce. My heart is pounding because we have an audience. If he doesn't like what is going on, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do, honestly, because we just haven't. It's been a different process. Bruce just walks on the stage and you just started rehearsing. Yeah. And so we're going, and we get. He's not saying much. I'm chatting him up a little. Oh yeah, picked a good deal. He's like, yep. We're gonna get to the first floor. We go up to the upstairs. And so Bruce is one more. There's one more little level. There's about 25 seats up here. We get to the top there. And he looks, and he just gives me this, and that's it. And that was it. Affirmation, and my heart burst with joy. And that was all I was going to get, and that was fine. And that was a fine experience.
You'd be like, wait, can you hold that so I can get a picture? That's
no
amazing.
Pictures, no nothing. Just I'll never forget it as long as I live. These 2 thumbs up. We're good, and it wound up being a great experience. So that's one of the good ones. But and he's a big star and a huge star, and it's used to things being.
He's the boss.
Yeah, and he was very pleasant actually to deal with, and he seemed good to everybody, and it was a nice vibe, good team. But so many times when you're coming up with problems or issues, the things that make your heart stop in the other way, they're rarely technical and they're usually more emotional. I was working on about 1998. It's probably only my 5th Broadway show. It was called Triumph of Love, and a big singer, a woman named Betty Buckley, she's probably, you call her the Idina Menzel of her time. She's
a legend of Broadway.
Huge. And she was one of those people who kind of grew up in the sound era. She was Grisabella on Cats, and so she knew about sound, and she was aware of sound. And she was some actors are just much more acutely aware of sound than others, and she just was one of those acutely aware people. And she was in rehearsal. She was always like, Brian, I can't hear myself, and I'm going to work on something. And but there was 2 shows. She was a big star. There was a younger female star in the same show. And she was I could see there was some juju between the 2 of them, so I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But this show was going well. But one night I thought things were going just fine, and I was asked to go to Betty's dressing room at intermission by the stage because she came and found me. You got to go see Betty, and I said, oh, sure. I'm not gonna go. Hey, Betty, what's up? And she just tells her dresser, could you leave and close the door?
Oh no.
I'm in the principal's office. I'm in the principal's office with Betty. And she sits there and she's doing her makeup sort of, and then she just turns to me and she's got tears in her eyes.
Oh no.
She says, Brian, are they telling you to make her sound better than me?
Oh.
Of course no one said that. No, it wasn't a reality at all. But she to her it was real. To her it was a thing, and I had to find some way to kind of like. And this is where the skill set of like, this is something I've noticed separate. I've had people that are very good in sound that they might say to me, "This is why I left sounds. I can't deal with this stuff. You know, I can fix your PA system, but this is a whole nother level of psychology that you have to kind of come up with." I don't know what I said. I reassured her. I did what I did what I had to do to make her feel calm and that kind of thing. And that was one instance where like this is one of those horror stories because there's no answer to this. I can't say, oh yeah, because no, of course we weren't. They both sounded fine. I don't know what was going on, but she was convinced, and that affects her performance. So I think I won her over, or maybe she just needed to say it, but we got through it, and I hadn't heard from her again. But it was one of those heart-stopping moments. And I had a similar one more recently. And again, now I'm a seasoned veteran now. I think everything's cool. But I was working with a woman on a show called War Paint. There was two female stars. There was Patti LuPone, who's a Broadway legend, and Christine Ebersol, who's also a Broadway legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but Patty, I knew about. I remember when I was sweeping the steps at the shop in like the 80s. Avita had just kind of happened, and Patty was Avita, and Steve Kennedy, who was the hotshot mixer of that whole era actually, and still remains a great designer and a great dude in general. But he would come to the shop, he was, oh man, this Patty LuPone's just all over me. She was one of these sound conscious performers. It was just a thing for her. Every night he was in her dressing room, and she's giving it to him about something. No one really knew what the problem was, but she just had a problem, and she had it. And I think that was just part of her process. But so we're going along, and so we're up on stage, and I when I knew I was working with Patty LuPone, I remembered Steve Kennedy and remember the 80s. Okay. And I used every tool I could. I had speakers built into every part of the set that it was available to me. So I could give her something if she needed. It's a whole matrix system dedicated to her. And we're going to rehearsal. I thought it was going okay. And all of a sudden it was just one of those days, and she just stopped the rehearsal and said, "Can I just say something? This is the worst sound I've ever heard in my life."
Oh no. What? Did your heart just drop?
Yeah. Damn it, really? Damn, I thought we were there. So I was working. I was trying to make sure she was good. Both ladies. I was trying to support both ladies, as I do everybody. But it's just what happened. And we just stopped the rehearsal. Director up on stage. Set design. We're all up on stage listening to Patty go on about how bad it all is, and we're all kind of scratching our heads. And it was pretty good to me, and everybody else too. And I didn't know how I was going to get out of this one, but this time I was thrown a lifeline, because in this scene there were two banquettes. They were supposed to be in a restaurant. Patty was here and Christine was over there, and then Patty was up there. She had us up there, and she was giving it to me, let me know why it was so bad and why I was so bad and all these bad things. And I didn't really know how I was going to Houdini my way out of this one. And suddenly there's a little pause, and bless her heart, Christine Ebersol on this side just goes, "Patty, I'm not having that same problem." And it was all it needed. It just diffused the situation, and we never heard about it again. So I never got to the root of what the problem was. I just think that maybe this particular performer, maybe she's in her process just needs a problem. And sound is a very valuable problem because you can't argue it.
And from my understanding of their relationship, Christine's one of the few people who can step in and do that. And thank goodness she was there, huh?
Yeah, sweetheart. And it couldn't be more different. It's vocal stylings and all this kind of thing, right. and what they required, in support and that kind of thing. But it was a real lifeline. I owe her big time. I will always.
Well, they're both incredible performers. Yeah. I know that. Both, Legends deluxe. Wow. They are not hidden stars.
No, they're out front as they should be.
That's awesome. Well, very good. We're getting down to it, and we're about out of time. But I can't. Again, the opportunity here. What's it like to win a Tony? I have aspirations that maybe for this show, maybe this is my chance, right? But who knows? But you've done it, my friend. What's that like?
I have to say, I was not one of the people that was beating the drum for the sound Tony. I was always quite content, kind of actually hanging in the back, quietly just doing my job. And not having to go to the Tony Awards, or the thought of going up and possibly winning and being up in front of a camera and stuff like that, more than I ever want to do. I'm a hidden person. I'm a hidden person. So the Sound Tony came along, and okay, I was happy for everybody. Yeah, that's great. And Scott Lair won the first one, and that was fantastic. And then was it what was Next to Normal? 2009 was the first time I was nominated for a show called Next to Normal. So I'm at the big dance. I'm there in my tux at Radio City, and luckily, and I know they're going to do the sound stuff early. They're going to get that out of the way, which is great. Just do it early so I can get out of here. And it starts the reality is, and Next to Normal was a good sounding show. I was really proud of that show. So I don't know. I was like, this is possible. And I started thinking about that. Like, crap, they might call my name. I might have to get up there in the spotlight, in the microphone, in Radio City, and say things. And I don't want to do this. I'm nervous. My heart is pounding. And I really thought my chest would explode. And I remember being literally relieved when they called somebody else's name. I remember very that fake applause. I was happy. It was called the one for the boy dancing show, the British ballet show. What was that called? The kid who becomes a ballet dancer. Billy Elliot. Yeah. Wow. Yes. Good for you, Billy Elliot. Good for you. But that experience happened. But then, fortunately, 2 years later, I was double nominated in 2011 for Anything Goes, a revival of Anything Goes, which I had just won a drama desk for 2 weeks prior, and Book of Mormon, which I thought, I knew it was a hot show, couldn't get a ticket, and sometimes I know that tips the scales, and I said, it's very possible. I don't know, but Anything Goes was an excellent sounding show. Book of Mormon sounds great. Anything Goes was an exceptional sounding show. And so I'm double nominated, and I remember being, one of the reasons I was so nervous the first time was I hadn't thought of anything to say, just in case they called my name. Like, if I get up there, I'm not gonna know what to do. And so I said, I'm going to get ahead of this time, just in case they call my name. I wrote a couple things on index cards that I planned to bring out. And I said, I have one for Anything Goes, basically the same thing, I just changed, the template was a little different. Stuck it in this part of my tux. And then I had Book of Mormon, A and B. And I put Book of Mormon in this pocket. And the interesting thing happens at the award shows, because they, it's for broadcast. It's basically a commercial for the Broadway community. And the broadcast is the most important thing. So they kind of keep the PA system kind of down. They don't want it circulating and getting back into the mics and screwing up the broadcast. So, as other performers or designers or performers or recipients get their name is called and the audience breaks into applause. And so I was really afraid of what might happen. I was afraid of this. They might say, Brian Ronan,
Did you don't know which card to pull?
I had my wife, your job, in case they call my name, he said, make sure I know which show they call. And so we got to the category, and I'm nervous, but it's manageable this time. I'm still quite nervous, and but I've been through it once. And so sure they go, and the winner of the 2011 Tony Award goes to Brian Ronan. She says, just Book of Mormon, go. And then she pushed me out the aisle, and I got up there. And when I got there, the kind of joy of it took over, and I didn't need my card. I was good. I just kind of I said some things and got to personalize it, so it was good. But it was quite a. I was surprised after the horror was over. For me, the horror being out in front of people, it's an elation. It's an elation. It's quite a feeling of elation that lasts quite a while. It's a good thing. It's a one thing. I remember in the subsequent years. I remember a good friend of mine, John Shivers, won for a show, and I just remember writing to him, like, and enjoy the high, because I know you're high for a while.
Yeah, well, it is well deserved. It is well deserved for sure. I was, last time I was in New York City, Book of Mormon was on the list of shows to go see, and we were there for a week. I hit the lottery 3 times.
Oh yeah.
2 of them in the same day. Unfortunately, Book of Mormon, I won. I hit the lottery for Dear Evan Hansen, and then 10 minutes later, I got notification, but we'd already committed to Dear Evan Hansen. So, yeah, next time. Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll be there when you come back. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm sure it will. Well, wonderful. Well, we're down to my two favorite questions.
Mhm.
And one of these is something that I just, I love theater people because they're passionate people, right? We love what we do. My hidden stars, especially because they don't get a lot of love, right? You don't get that curtain call. You don't. You do what you do because you love what you do, and you love the show, and you love to serve the show.
Mhm.
But within that, they all have this diverse number of reasons as the main thing that fuels their passion.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
love to hear that. And so I would put that to you. What is it that gets Brian Ronan up and excited about a new show, or about, is it opening night, or what aspect of it is it that just really jazzes you?
You've heard me mention the team aspect. I've kind of grown up a team member, and I guess it's something I've been. It's something that rings solid within me. I like being part of a team, and when you get a show, there comes this day where you get the contact sheet gets laid out. And you pull that out, and it's like, it reminds me of when I was a kid, like in Little League, that first day you get your uniform, and it was like, all right, it's happening, and it kind of feels like that. And I was like, oh, here's a contact. Who's in the show? Who do I know? And luckily, I've been in the business a while, and Midtown's a small little area, so I know a lot of the people, for the most part, and so what's so fascinating is it's this fresh start of a new team / family that occurs like sometimes several times a year. It's like it's a new beginning of this new process with these new people in another venue, in another space, on another show, and you get to start all over again. And you can't believe you're going to go through that whole process one more time, but it's a process you love to go through with this new team. And it's a fascinating thing, and it gives you another jolt of adrenaline, like getting your uniform that first day, and getting it going, running home and putting it on, and it reminds you of where you are and what you're doing, and that you've been so lucky to find something that you want to do, that you can't stop doing, and you can make a living at it. So it's the passion for me is that first day of the contact sheet, learning who's in the company, who I'm going to be working with, who I'm going to be living with. Quite literally, if we're doing it out of town, it might be these people are going to be. I'm going to be having dinners with these people for sometimes like 6 months, till we get to opening night. So that's what thing that gets me is this new beginning that occurs over and over again. I don't have children, so I get to this consumes me. I allow this to consume me, and so it takes hold of me in a way that I hope it does for other people. Other people might have more diversity in their lives, but it works for me, and that's what it is. It's that new beginning each time.
That's great because, one of the things that you accomplished avoiding what you didn't want, right out of high school. You said you didn't want that kind of day-to-day mundane for the
Yeah.
entire your life, doing the same thing every day. So it's a sense of freshness, a sense of newness.
Yeah.
That's so
Mhm.
so that actually just brought to mind a new question. I know when I do a show, you do get involved with those people. They become a part of your life. You're with them constantly. Do you, on your level, when you're finished with that process and kind of put it out on its own, do you mourn that a little bit?
We always have this. There's always a day after the show's open. I got to come back to get my your opening night cards and this gifts you want to carry in the bag that they gave you, to the party and stuff like that. So there's always a couple days after that you come back to the show, and it's like, and I have had this conversation many times. Like, crap, I've had dinner, my operator. I've had dinner with you every night for 6 months now, and it's I wouldn't say I mourn it because I might have when I was younger, but it's now just part of the system. It's also part of the process. It's part of the ending process. So no, I can't say that I mourn it. I think it's time at that time, but it is bizarre. But we all touch points. Yeah, it's so weird to see you with them, and you're gone. And and that's it. Until you bump into these people, of course, and we have further business to do, but not like that. Not as an intense level, from morning till night for months and months at a time.
Yeah. Well, and how often do you go back and see the shows?
It depends. I try to ballpark it like once, like every 6 weeks or so, but that's predicated on you always have to go back when your A2 is now trained, and I always wait. I don't bother them. I'll say, "Are we ready? Are you ready for me?" And like, no, I give them another few passes at it and that kind of thing, and I come back and check on that. If a new star goes into a show or a new actor goes into a show, if one of the performers is having sound problems, you go back and check. So you're tethered to it. But there's no particular. But I tend to try to do like every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, go back and just check in on the show. Even if it's just to hear the overture, make sure things are going well. Check with the stage managers, how we doing, how's the cast doing, because they sometimes sound becomes part of the topic backstage, and and make sure that's going well. Check in with the stage manager. Yeah, it's more of like a hovering, tethered kind of association, unless it's a full on. All right, it's been a year. Let's go. Everybody go back and check on the show and see what's going on, which we need to do, especially a long running show, because operators, the best operators, you drift. You can't help but drift. Your fingers go a little harder, maybe a little softer, and that becomes the normal for you, and you need. And I'll come back and say, "Oh, wait, that's not what I remember. Let's talk about that." So you need to touch it.
Yeah, or if relatives come in from out of town, right, and they want to go see the show,
yeah,
then you're obligated. Well, that's awesome. Well, we're down to the wall of wisdom, and the wall of wisdom that is filling up, but there is space for more wisdom. And so,
is that tape? Is that gaffer's tape? What is that?
Yeah, gaff tape. Absolutely,
right,
that's it. Keeping the theme. It is. I'm running low. I'm going to have to order some more, but we'll call Rose Brand and see what we can get hooked up. So yeah, and it's in my white paint pen that exploded on me, but I'm still using it. So there's some great wisdom up there, but I bet you have more for us, sir. Well, so what shall I put on your piece of gaff tape that will live in infamy?
I'll borrow something from like a crusty old local one stagehand said to me when I was a young guy trying to do too much, trying to not burden anybody else, just try to do too much. And he said, "Kid, don't hump if you don't have to." And first, oh, that's silly. That the wisdom of that has caught up to me over the years. Like, no, you don't. You're doing nobody any favors if you feel you need to do everything. You have these people available to you, and you're part of the skill set is this delegating duty and responsibility and literally weight sometimes to pick up. So I'll steal that. I can't remember the name, but don't hump if you don't have to. Use what's available to you. Share the load.
That's right. Yep. Why carry it if it's not your job and somebody else is there and they're getting paid for it? And yeah, many hands make light work.
Yeah, sure.
Very good. Well, I got it right here.
Great.
Right, and we're going to put it on the board. And if I can find the spot, but we will. We're getting a new board to go with our new space, so it won't live for long. For now, there it is. Boom. Very good. Yay. Well, what an awesome time.
Yeah, me too. This has been fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And there is one last thing here, and it's going to require you to use the suspension of disbelief. And imagine that I am an audience of thousands, because one of the things that I am dedicated to is for all of my stars. Now, you've gotten some applause at the Tonys of things, but for the shows that you put up, you don't get to go to the curtain call, right? Yeah. You just got to watch those silly actors take all the credit. But you deserve every bit as much as any of them do. And so this, sir, is your curtain call. I would stand up if I wasn't afraid I'd knock something over here because you deserve it. But thank you. Thank you. Yes. Multiply this by thousands and thousands of all the people that are going to watch it around the world.
Kind of you. Yeah, thank you.
Well, you are truly a star, and you are. I out all of my stars. They're not hidden after the show because we share them with the world. But it's an honor that you would take the time and just share your story with us, and such great wisdom and such an encouraging story for all of us that we can do this. And the things that you taught us, especially, I keep going back to that process. I really do challenge anyone that watches this, whatever level of your theater on. If you don't take the time to do a sound design, start making that a part of your show's process, because your audience deserves it, and you deserve it, and your actors deserve it, and it will make a difference. I know, for me, I have, from this experience and talking to you, I've decided as a director, I will not just call a sound guy. I'm going to get a sound designer and challenge them to watch this episode and learn your process, and let's do our best to do that. Raise the level.
You don't hire a sound designer, you realize you're going to need one at first audience. That's what's going to dawn on you. The first time the paid audience walks in, oh crap, we should have a sound person here. So good for you for thinking on it preemptively. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is it. And as always, thank you for all of you guys that are watching us out there in the world. Man, let this be a challenge to you to find the aspect of this thing that you love, whatever it is. If you have talents, all of us are talented. You may not be an actor. You may not love to dance. You may not love to sing. They may not be your thing, but there is something that you love in this world. And I guarantee you there's some way that it can be applied in this wonderful world of theater. And so if you love theater, find that place, apply it, and maybe it is. Maybe you'll be the next Tony Award-winning designer, or maybe you'll be a child wrangler, or maybe you'll be a stage manager. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's important, because all of our stars are important. So do it. Go out there and do it. Amen, Brian. Would you say that?
Amen to you. Amen to you.
All right. Now I have to take an off. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to take it off. But that is it for us here in the camper. Have a great day. We'll see you next time right here on the Hidden Stars of Theater. Thanks. Bye-bye.